You probably recognize this as a VR headset. Some workplaces have started using them for business meetings. A lot of people love playing games on them, and Meta, thinks they're going to be very important in the future. But I have one in large part because it's one of the two easiest ways available to people on the North American continent to watch and enjoy 3D movies at home. And that's starting to be the case in a lot of Europe and Asia, where home 3D held on in the market for a lot longer than it did in the United States. But in the US, all major television manufacturers have long abandoned the format as a lost cause. If you don't have an older TV with 3D capability, or you're not willing to pay a premium either to buy a used one on eBay or to import it from a country where 3D is still alive and well, then you have two options. The first is that you buy yourself a 3D capable projector and a projector screen that's designed for 3D. For a quality viewing experience, this can get expensive. So expensive that VR headsets like this one, while not cheap, are downright affordable by comparison. Before we get into the VR headset, let's talk a little bit about 3D. A few years ago, it was all the rage as digital 3D hit the theaters, but the format is even older than that.
Careful, sir. Keep your head down or I'll tap you on the chin.
No, even older than that. In 1849, Joseph Plateau, who had developed an animation wheel he called the Phantascope, published an article in which he suggested an early form of what we now know as stop-motion animation. While the Phantascope used drawings, Plateau envisioned animation created by photographing a series of plaster statuettes in different poses. Jules Dubosc, who was already marketing Plateau's original Phantascope, combined the idea with stereoscopic photography as developed by Charles Wheatstone and Henry Fox Talbot to produce what he called the bioscope. Unfortunately for Dubosc, the process he developed was expensive and finicky to produce for, and very few people were interested in buying the bioscope itself. In fact, for about as long as we've had animation, people have been trying to add a third dimension to it. Johann Nepomuk Chermak published about experiments trying to add 3D to the animation effect of a zoetrope by finding a way to combine the images from two different discs. U.S. patent number 35317 is for Coleman Sellers II's kinematoscope, which was supposed to animate a series of stereoscopic photographs. His original patent uses only 3 sets of 2 photographs each, but included notes for creating an even larger series of pictures. Edward Muybridge's famous running horse sequence, considered by many to be the first true motion picture, may have been filmed in 3D. I say may because Muybridge claimed that he had shot it using a stereoscopic camera and had then viewed it through synchronized zoetropes for a 3D effect. But if all of that is true, then he appears to be the only one who ever watched it through that synchronized setup. And since we're this far back, 3D film appears to be one of the few instances where Thomas Edison missed the opportunity to capitalize on someone else's idea. After he debuted the phonograph, an article in Scientific American suggested combining audio from a phonograph with projected stereoscopic photographs to carry the illusion of real presence. But as far as the record shows, Edison never even experimented with that concept, let alone brought it to fruition. The first movie confirmed to have been shown to an audience in 3D was Harry K. Farrell's The Power of Love. It debuted almost 100 years ago in 1922 and was shown to the audience in a red-green anaglyph, that cardboard glasses style of 3D that you might remember if you ever watched 3D on a television before digital became a thing. It was shown to an audience in Los Angeles and then screened for exhibitors and press in New York City, and then nobody bought the movie. Theaters didn't bother to book it, and it's now considered a lost film. But 1922 was a banner year for filmmakers trying to crack 3D projection. Lawrence Hammond, who would go on to invent the Hammond organ, developed the first system to project alternating left and right frames, similar to the way modern-day 3D shutter glass TVs work. But his system used rotary shutters in special viewing devices installed at every single seat in the theater and mechanically synchronized with the film's projector, so it was a bit expensive, not to mention bulky and difficult to maintain for wide adoption. Frederick Eugene Ives and Jacob Leventhal, meanwhile, produced 3D anaglyphic educational shorts, which would eventually land them a production deal with Pathé Films. And as anyone who has watched 2011's Hugo can tell you, Louis Lumière was shooting stereoscopic 3D and exhibiting it at the French Academy of Science in the 1920s. Even the modern polarized lenses or cinema 3D glasses go back farther than most audiences today realize. In 1939, Italian and German audiences watched 3D films through polarized lenses, just 10 years after the material for those lenses had been invented by Edwin H. Land as a way to reduce the glare from car headlights. The 1939 New York World's Fair even included a 3D film called In Tune with Tomorrow that was projected on a silver screen and viewed through polarized lenses. This was the first glimmer of a commercial 3D boom, and just as it was getting going, it was halted by World War II, when production of stereoscopic photographic equipment for commercial use was halted. Instead, that technology was prioritized for military purposes. Battlefield reporters and military filmmakers were the only people who had ready access to the new 3D stereoscopic technology. And as a result, we actually have quite a lot of 3D footage taken during the war. After the war ended, wartime field cameramen returned home with experience using stereoscopic equipment on short notice and under harsh conditions, leading to a true boom in 3D film production that is where most people's knowledge of the history of 3D movies picks up.
Now, there's someone with a bag of popcorn. Close your mouth. It's the bag I'm aiming at, not your tonsils. Here she comes.
This is what many people who know 3D consider to be the golden era of 3D filmmaking. 1952's Bwana Devil was produced, written, and directed by Arch Oboler, who was just a fascinating man, and we'll have to talk about him a lot more in the future. The movie was shot in what was called natural vision, a two-strip 3D process. That means two separate strips of film that used Polaroid filters in the 3D glasses that completed the effect. For much of this time period, the anaglyphic red-green or red-blue 3D was used for 3D comic books more than it was for movies. The projection process called for two separate, synchronized projectors, and the layout of the projection system meant that the projectors could only hold film for 1 hour of watching at a time. So Bwana Devil required an intermission every time it was shown, as did most 3D produced then, leading the producers of those films to write the intermission break into the script. As had happened earlier with the advent of sound film, a lot of titles snapped up for distribution were what we would consider tech demos today. For sound, theaters had thrilled audiences with the hissing and popping of frying bacon. For 3D, film producers saw lesser sent around street scenes shot around Chicago, and educational films about the new art of 3D movies that had originally been produced by the National Film Board of Canada. It was enough in these movies to simply grab the audience's attention with something they had never seen before, an image projected on a screen in 3D. In 1953, Columbia released the modestly successful Man in the Dark, a 3D film noir, but the movie that made a real splash that year was House of Wax, starring Vincent Price, which became one of the first truly successful 3D features, and was the first movie released into wide distribution with stereophonic sound. Movie theaters that had been losing their audience to the rise of television saw people rushing back to see 3D movies and touched off a boom in the format. Price himself would appear in 3 more 3D films over the next few years: The Mad Magician, Dangerous Mission, and Son of Sinbad. Disney would produce its first 3D film, the short Melody, to run in front of Columbia's Fort Ty, the first Hollywood 3D Western. In fact, Columbia would stake a lot of its 3D work on Westerns, where future cinema sideshow magnate William Castle would learn his craft. And when they weren't producing Westerns, Columbia would put their 3D infrastructure to work shooting comedy shorts, including some starring the Three Stooges. In the modern day, we think of 3D as a summer tentpole movie staple, something most commonly seen in action, science fiction, or horror. But 3D was a format for any and every genre as far as Hollywood was concerned at the time. Not only did Robot Monster and It Came from Outer Space get the 3D treatment, but so did John Wayne in Hondo, the film adaptation of Broadway's Kiss Me Kate, and Martin and Lewis comedy Money from Home. Popeye the Sailor appeared in 3D, as did Casper the Friendly Ghost. Unfortunately, the boom in 3D did not last very long. The equipment was expensive to run, and running 2 synchronized prints meant that one broken print could completely disrupt the 3D effect. Some movies filmed in 3D only saw limited release, like Alfred Hitchcock's Dial M for Murder, before they were sent around in a flat 2D format for audiences everywhere, while others, like Phil Silvers' Top Banana, were shot in 3D, but never shown in anything but 2D. Polaroid tried to save the format by releasing a Telltale filter kit that was supposed to help theaters easily resync 3D that had fallen out of sync. But it wasn't enough to keep theaters interested. Remember that House of Wax proved the profitability of 3D in 1953. But by 1955, 3D was already thought of as a fad whose time had passed. Clearly, if 3D was going to make a return to cinemas, it would need to be reinvented in a smaller, easier-to-show format. Single strip formats, that is, 3D that could be run on a single strip of film through a single projector, hit theaters in the mid-1960s. Arch Oboler once again pioneered a 3D format with The Bubble, filmed and released in the new single-strip Space Vision 3D.
Pardon me, sir. Could you tell me the name of this town? The name of the town. Whatever it isn't courtesy.
This 3D format squeezed the left and right frames into a single frame of a film strip, one sitting on top of the other, and then used a beam splitter to correct the aspect ratio of the images and display them during projection. As long as any damage to the film was spliced by somebody who knew that each frame was 2 images instead of 1, the 3D effect would not fall out of sync. Once again, audiences came to the theater to see 3D in all its glory, and film studios decided that something great was happening. Independent producers in particular loved the Space Vision format because it was cheap and easy to distribute. By 1970, there was competition in the form of Stereovision, the same concept as Space Vision, but the images were laid out side by side, and a special Panasonic polarized lens was used to project them properly. This 3D mini boom was driven by independent productions seeking to draw people in with the promise of an immersive experience, including Paul Morrissey's Flesh for Frankenstein and the X-rated comedy The Stewardesses.
Hello, boys. Have a good night's rest. I missed you.
Meanwhile, Anaglyphic 3D was finding a toehold on pre-digital television in special 3D events and episodes. This 3D boom lagged toward the end of the 70s, but revived in the 80s with many film franchises releasing 3D installments, such as Friday the 13th, A Nightmare on Elm Street, Jaws, and Amityville. It was such a common occurrence that it was even satirized in the second installment of Back to the Future.
Shark still looks fake.
Originals not part of any franchise also hit the screen then, including the spaghetti western Comin' At Ya, the sci-fi epic Metal Storm: The Destruction of Jared Sin, and the animated sci-fi film Star Chaser: The Legend of Orin. In the international market, 3D started to make inroads as well. In Japan, 3D VHDs of 80s and 50s movies were popular, and, oh dear lord, I'm going to have to say this title, My Dear Kutachatan was shot in stereoscopic 3D in India. Toward the end of the 80s and into the early 90s, IMAX started filming productions in 3D, while Disney filmed Captain EO and Muppet Vision 3D for display exclusively in their parks. These big event destination venue 3D films helped to keep the idea alive, even as 3D experienced yet another mainstream lull. The most recent boom in 3D movies that included such hits as Avatar, Prometheus, and Shrek Forever After had its roots in 1985, as many IMAX theaters started introducing 3D into their offerings. The IMAX investment in 3D led to advances in the technology that caught the attention of James Cameron and Robert Rodriguez. Cameron would produce the documentary Ghosts of the Abyss in 2003, while Rodriguez would use the same camera system to film Spy Kids 3D, Game Over, and The Adventures of Shark Boy and Lava Girl in 3D. Just a couple of years later, digital 3D systems would start to be installed in theaters, and we had the modern 3D boom. At the moment, 3D appears to be entering yet another lull in popularity, following over a decade of success, and many people trace that lull all the way back to the release of Clash of the Titans in 3D, which is infamous as a hasty 2D to 3D conversion that convinced many studios not to invest in 3D filming, but rather to digitally convert 2D movies after the fact. As these conversions became more common and ultimately started to outnumber movies originally filmed in 3D, audience interest started to wane. As you've probably guessed by now, I love 3D movies, unabashedly and wholeheartedly. Back in 2007, fresh into a new job at a creative agency, my first major splurge was an LG TV with passive 3D and a handful of 3D Blu-rays. Several years later, I sold that television at a bargain price because I was moving to a different state and expected to buy a 3D television there, only to learn that I had moved at the tail end of America's 3D in the home experiment and that no major television manufacturer was offering 3D as an option in their newer models.
Everything's fine, I'm fine.
A lot of people say that it's because the audience ultimately decided that 3D was a gimmick, but the actual numbers suggest it's much more complicated. Audiences were frustrated by a lack of 3D content for their new televisions. They didn't like that 3D Blu-rays were generally more expensive than 2D, didn't seem to go on sale nearly as often, or that streaming services were limiting their 3D content and even charging a premium for access to the feature. Plus, TV manufacturers started going all in on promoting 4K, but the 4K Blu-ray standard didn't include a solution for 3D at the time. And in addition to the audience backlash to digital post-conversion, audiences complained of badly calibrated projections and projectors running too dark to allow the audience to see details. But ultimately, 3D seems to have been hurt most by the production companies themselves. As Brandon Gray wrote on Box Office Mojo, 3D's more money from fewer people approach has simply led to less money from even fewer people. Audiences opting for more 2D screenings led to fewer 3D movies hitting theaters. Less 3D content for theaters completed a feedback loop as home audiences found even less content for their 3D televisions, and home 3D in North America has ground to a halt. Now, industry analysts have started to say that there might be hope for a revival of 3D in the home market coming up soon. First of all, we're starting to see light field displays like the super expensive Loom Pad, which promises glasses-free 3D. And that's actually something that a lot of audiences say they were waiting for. And recent electronics shows have featured television manufacturers showing off their 8K screens, with pixel density so great that they actually demonstrated glasses-free 3D without using any additional hardware. As TV manufacturers try to market 8K to audiences who may have recently purchased a 4K television, we might see glasses-free 3D emerge as a selling point, one that could be integrated without raising the cost of the televisions too far beyond their base cost. But even before that happens, some television manufacturers have started teasing a possible return of 3D as a feature on 4K televisions, as the 3D standard for 4K has finally been decided. Until we see such a return, however, options for home 3D are limited to projectors and VR headsets. Projectors and screens are by and large the superior format, but they carry with them a superior price tag, ranging into the thousands of dollars just for the technology. That's before you get into the actual setup. I'm a few thousand subscribers and monthly viewing hours away from being a monetized YouTuber, let alone a full-time one, so I don't exactly have set up my own screening room money. That leaves me with the option of a VR headset. The original Oculus Developers Kit came out long enough ago that 3D TV was still making a major push in the North American market, and it's interesting to note that, at the time, some early adopters said that it offered the greatest promise for making home 3D successful. They said that not only was it on a larger virtual screen, but that the 3D was being watched directly from the screen instead of being viewed through special glasses, making for a brighter, clearer experience. I've had this headset for a while now, and while I do enjoy watching 3D on it, it's far from a perfect experience. First of all, you might notice that I'm still using the out-of-the-box headband, so prolonged wear can be a bit uncomfortable. Second, the whole process of getting a 3D Blu-ray into a format that can be used with a VR headset is not quite user-friendly. If you, say, spent all the extra money you had on a VR headset, and you don't have the $60 to $150 for the out-of-the-box software solution, you're going to need to run your videos through a lot of different pieces of freeware, with names like MakeMKV, BD3D to MK3D, and of course, Handbrake. Once you've got that done, you'll need to find a 3D movie app you enjoy and hope you remembered to turn off auto-cropping for all of your conversions, or you're going to have a bad time.
Everything's fine. I'm fine.
There are hoops upon hoops to jump through just to get to the viewing of the 3D material you already own, although a couple of apps do offer in-VR rentals and purchases of 3D movies. But for all that time and work, this headset, the Meta Quest 2, winds up offering a fairly low-resolution experience. It's possible, if you can invest in a higher-resolution headset, that your experience would be better, but this is the affordable option. And if you want to enjoy your 3D movies the way they were meant to be seen, without breaking the bank too badly, this remains your best bet for the moment.
Shark still looks fake.
Alfred Hitchcock's Dial M for Murder was originally filmed in 3D. The director, coming fresh off of Psycho, was told by his studio that his next movie had to be in 3D, even though he was absolutely certain that the craze of the time was already fading. Even so, he was determined to do something unique with the format. He hired Robert Burke as his director of photography, whom he had previously worked with on Strangers on a Train, and who, in the interim, had worked on both House of Wax and Hondo, both shot in 3D. Together, they developed a look that was less about thrusting or throwing things at the camera, and more about using 3D to create a sense of space and reality. When the film was released, the studio only did a very limited run in 3D in major cities before distributing the film worldwide in 2D. To this day, many audiences, including many classic movie buffs, are unaware that the film was originally intended to be watched in 3D, and many who do know that it was supposed to be watched in 3D continue to spread the story that Alfred Hitchcock never cared for 3D, which is only half accurate. Hitchcock initially didn't care for the idea of doing the movie in 3D, but after working with his director of photography, he decided that that was the only way he wanted the movie to be seen. Hey everybody, editing mode Glenn here. Just wanted to pop in to make a last-minute addition. You know, as I was recording this video, it was right before the weekend of CES, and all of the big electronics companies were going to be showing off their brand new products, and I was just like, wouldn't it be funny if somebody just dropped a really big 3D announcement in the middle of CES? And I had been sitting here recording a video about how, hey, it looks like nobody's really doing 3D anymore. Absolutely none of the major companies released anything brand new 3D. However, there was a company at CES this year apparently showing off a glasses-free display. It's not a brand new company. They've been around for a while. They've been a fixture at CES for a while. They're called IQH3D. But in investigating what they have available, all of their new offerings, I found that while most of their offerings are super expensive, they even have their own 3D answer to the Loom Pad that's similarly priced. There was this one thing squirreled away on their website, which is the IQH3D View Screen Protector, which is a smartphone screen protector that claims to allow you to watch glasses-free 3D on your smartphone. Now, I haven't tried this. I can't recommend it. However, I am definitely looking at getting one because if it does what it says it does, it's a super affordable way to watch 3D. Still not something that you can gather all of your friends around and share in the experience, but something you can do to enjoy 3D video. If I get this in, of course, I will make a video letting you guys know how it goes. But for the moment, I just wanted to throw this out there for anybody who wanted to investigate. The 3D View screen protector that I'm looking at costs around $20 to $30 depending on what model of phone that you're getting it for. Which, if you're just looking for a way to enjoy 3D video, 20 to 30 bucks is a super low cost for it. Anyway, past Glenn just did his little moment of trivia for the end of the video, but I wanted to take a moment as well to say thank you for helping support the channel. If you haven't yet, drop down there, give this video a comment, like and subscribe if you haven't already. And also, if you're in the position to help the channel grow, we do have links to Ko-Fi and Patreon down in the description. Either one of those is great. We are just refreshing our Patreon to bring it into line with more of what the Film Optimist does. If you aren't able to make a one-time contribution through Ko-Fi or make a pledge to Patreon, then that's super awesome, and I thank you for being here anyway. And of course, there is the share button down there that you can share this video with your friends. That's always a big help for us, just getting the videos out there. Until next time, I am the Film Optimist in editing mode, reminding you to watch like it means something.